Look, if the Taliban does something bad, they need to be called out on it. Yeah, just like anybody else. What do I think about the Taliban? Who cares what I think about the Taliban? They are now ruling their country. Like, they're doing their thing, isn't it?
Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Muslims of TikTok. Today we're responding to Zishan Ali, aka Smile to Jannah. Zishan tries hard to put forward this image as a friendly guy who wants to make the world better, but as we go through his videos and break down his arguments, we'll see how even salt can look like sugar. So how about we begin with Zishan's video on if Islam is about control.
You said at the beginning that sometimes religion can be seen as a form of control. But with Islam, it's the exact opposite. The only thing Islam tells you and I to control is our desires. It doesn't tell us to control each other. I may have the desire to force this or harm you or do this. Islam says, no, you can't do that.
Well, that would all be a great message, if Islam actually said that. In reality, though, the Quran says over and over again to fight those who don't believe in Allah, until they pay the tax and submit to Islam. And this fighting is not optional, by the way. Chapter 2, verse 216 makes it clear that it's a requirement. If those verses don't make it obvious enough that you are allowed to harm people, Chapter 24, verse 2 says people who have sex out of wedlock should be lashed 100 times. And Chapter 5, verse 38 says to cut off the hands of thieves. Zishan won't mention these verses when talking to a potential convert, but when speaking directly to his followers, he admits he wants to control people. After the brutal murder of Mahsa Amini by the theocratic Iranian government, Iranian women were protesting by burning their hijabs. And this display of freedom angered Zishan enough to make a video defending Islamic law.
When it comes to secular law, you know, the law that we follow in the United Kingdom, what happens when you go against it? Well, there's a consequence. There's a punishment. There is no option. If you cross a red light, if you walk around naked, that's it. There's a consequence. But when it comes to Islamic law, not secular law, Islamic law.
No, that needs to be optional. Hijab is choice. Has to be an option.
Why the disparity here? That's the first question.
Because of what you said, that Islam doesn't tell us to control each other.
I may have the desire to force this or harm you or do this. Islam says, no, you can't do that.
You answered your own question, unless of course you were lying before.
You see a woman and you want to kind of, have your way with her. Islam says, no, how dare you? Yeah, if you are to be with that woman, you are to marry her. When you marry her, you will give her mahar. You will give her a gift to show that you appreciate her. There needs to be 2 witnesses and verses of the Quran will be read so she feels valued.
Well, I wonder how valued she'd feel if you read chapter 4, verse 3 to her, which tells men they're allowed to have up to 4 wives. This sends the message that as a wife, you're not unique, you're expendable. So it shouldn't be shocking that polygamous marriages have higher levels of depression, anxiety, hostility, and more. And polygamy is only offered to men, by the way. Women are only allowed 1 husband. Nothing says you're valued like having fewer rights. It's also worth noting there's a difference between being valued and being respected. For example, a slave owner values their slave as property, but not as a human being. And if you feel that's an unfair analogy, then you should know that the Quran allows marrying slaves.
And so if something happens, people know that that relationship took place. There is safety.
How can there be safety in a relationship where abuse is seen as okay? Chapter 4, verse 34 of the Quran says you're allowed to beat your wife. Multiple reports, or hadith, also indicate that Prophet Muhammad approved of wife beating. In one hadith, Muhammad strikes his wife Aisha on the chest, causing her pain. In another hadith, when one of Muhammad's companions informs him that he slapped a girl, Muhammad laughs. In yet another hadith, a woman comes to Muhammad complaining about her abusive husband, and shows a green spot on her skin from being beaten. Muhammad tells her that she can't remarry until her husband has sex with her.
There is safety.
Zishan's deception does not end at the Quran. He also does it with scientific research. During one of his debates, Zishan argues that women have to wear the hijab because their hair is innately sexual, and he provides a study which allegedly backs up his point.
I would then go to science and I would say, what have the scientific experiments told us about the sexual kind of representation of the hair? And the studies do tell us that the hair is innately sexual. and it does have sexual value.
So, after reading the full paper for myself, I have to wonder if Zishan even read beyond the abstract, because this paper does not back him up. Number 1, nowhere does the study claim or even imply that hair is innately sexual. You can read the full paper for free on ResearchGate and you will not find anything saying that. In fact, the study says the exact opposite, suggesting that what people deem attractive can change based on their environment. For example, there's research showing a rise in hijab pornography, so some people may feel the hijab is more sexual than showing your hair. But that brings us to problem 2. The study did not control for whether or not hair was shown. The only options, as Zishan showed himself, were for skin tone, hair length, and hair color. There was no option for head coverings or being bald, so we have no way of knowing how those options would compare. It's like if Zishan said people prefer soda over fruit juice, but then showed a paper that had no option for fruit juice and only compared Coke and Pepsi. But even if the study did have a head covering option, there would still be a problem. The study had a very limited sample. The participants were all from London, were all white, and were all around 22 years old. For someone who's so critical of the Western world, it's odd that you would hold it up as the authority on what's attractive. The researchers even admit the paper is not representative of all people, and that they didn't investigate how your own features could impact your preferences. The final limitation we'll go over is that the study didn't even use real pictures of women. They used these cartoon drawings made in Microsoft Paint, and the researchers admit this could limit the validity of the results. So in short, Zishan either didn't read the full paper, or he did, but didn't think anybody would fact-check him. But let's say hypothetically that Zishan is correct and this study does say hair is innately sexual. Well, hair isn't the only sexual part of the body. There are studies showing that lips are sexual, and studies showing that smiling is sexual. So women showing their mouths in public seems a bit haram. Let's cover that up. But I'm still seeing a bit of a problem here. There's research out there showing the eyes are sexual. In fact, eye contact plays a role in the development of romantic attraction. So if we were to apply Zishan's logic consistently, you'd wear the burqa, the same covering that's mandated by the Taliban. Which brings us to... After America pulled out of Afghanistan in 2021, the radical Islamic group the Taliban quickly took back control. And when sharing his thoughts on the Taliban, Zishan, for once in his life, chose to be agnostic.
Are Taliban good or bad? The conclusion is gonna be, we don't know. Yeah, we don't know. Okay, but there's so many different variables at play here, it's very difficult to pin this down.
Yeah, so many different variables, like will they stone you or will they whip you? This is like saying we don't know what'll happen if Sniper Wolf finds out where you live. If we simply look over their prior behavior, we can logically predict what they'll do in the future. But will Zishan actually bring up their behavior?
Now, the reason why they're considered bad is because when they were in power, they would mete out certain punishments. Yeah, and those punishments were according to their interpretation of Islamic law.
Notice how Zishan can never bring up anything specific. He has to cloak the Taliban's actions in vague generalizations. This is a tactic used in propaganda called doublespeak. It's useful for situations when you have to mention something negative, but don't want your audience to think about it too much. But don't worry. Zishan says that if a Taliban does something bad, they need to be called out.
Look, if the Taliban does something bad, they need to be called out on it. Yeah, just like anybody else.
So let's see what the Taliban has done to Afghanistan since regaining power. Now, before I begin, Zishan has made it clear that he doesn't trust Western media.
I wouldn't say rely too much on the CNN and the BBC and the Skies. Balance it with Al Jazeera as well and other news outlets from different countries.
So for this segment, I'll only be using headlines from Al Jazeera. The Taliban closes Afghan girls' schools hours after reopening. Taliban orders Afghan women to cover their faces in public. Taliban disperses Afghan Women's March for Work and Freedom. Afghan women barred from gyms, Taliban official says. Taliban carries out first public execution since Afghan takeover. Return of Afghan floggings as Taliban takes a hardline path. Apparently, Zishan found none of this behavior bad enough to call out, though. It was far more important to share a photo of the Taliban eating ice cream. It wasn't until the Taliban banned women from universities that he finally made a video about them again. But did he condemn them?
When it comes to them telling us this is bad and that's happening in this part of the country, I'm always asking, why are they highlighting that particular issue at this moment in time?
Yes, why are they highlighting an authoritarian policy that'll impact millions of women? Why aren't they covering the important issues like the Taliban's favorite fucking ice cream? Zishan conveniently leaves out the fact that Afghani activists were also reporting on the university ban. People that work with Afghani women. You know, those people you pretend to care about. Zishan's next trick to not condemn the Taliban is by using yet another propaganda tactic called whataboutism. It's where you evade the original issue by changing the subject. In this case, he changes it from the Taliban to the West.
If you ask me generally, should women be educated? The general usul and principle is yes. However, when you look at, say, the schooling system here in the West, when it comes to LGBT and the way the girls and the boys are mixing and madness creeps in, I would say hold your horses before you jump to a yes or a no there.
First of all, why are you making this about the West when it's happening in Afghanistan? The Taliban control the country now, so they dictate the curriculum. If the curriculum was the issue, why would they only ban women and not men too? Second, these are not children we're talking about, these are adult women being barred from higher education. Who are you to tell them what they can and can't learn about? If you really believed that Islam says not to control people, you would not be defending this move.
Yes, people are saying, okay, you know, this is happening and that's happening. Yo, like, wagwan. Like, let's find out more about this. But if you're telling me, no, BBC said it, therefore I must now have an opinion and I must condemn it. Nah, mate, not down for that, mate.
If you actually cared about finding out more, you would know that plenty of non-Western media, including media from Afghanistan, also covered the university ban. But, just like with the Afghani activists, you'll conveniently ignore anything that hurts your narrative. I later found out that Zishan's video was actually part of a broader livestream. The section about the university ban happens around 8 minutes in, but near the end of the stream, a commenter asked him directly what he thinks about the Taliban, and his answer is quite revealing.
What do you think about the Taliban? I don't like it when the shot is dead. What do I think about the Taliban? Who cares what I think about the Taliban? You know what I'm saying? Look, if the Taliban does something bad, they need to be called out on it. Yeah, just like anybody else. Like they've removed an invader. They are now ruling their country. Like they're doing their thing, isn't it?
Now, I said earlier that we can look at a person's prior behavior to predict what they'll do in the future. So with that in mind, after what you've seen Zishan defend, what kind of future do you think he's after? I wish I could tell you that Smile to Jannah is a fringe figure, but in reality, he's one of the most popular Islamic commentators on YouTube, and his following is growing every day. Which brings me to my final point. It's not enough for us to debunk propagandists like Zishan. If we want to effectively counter them, to turn the tide away from the future they seek to impose, we need to be able to match their visibility. That's not going to be easy, but here's a first step. If you found this video valuable, subscribe to my channel and ring the bell so you always know when new videos come out. If you can't wait, I'll also have previous videos linked on screen. And if you want to take your support to the next level, you can also join me over on Patreon. It's thanks to my generous patrons that I recently purchased a better microphone for my videos. But, until next time, stay safe.